Honourable Member for Dunkley.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. As we've heard, this bill responds to 5 recommendations of the Robertson Review, which was into the adequacy of the regulation of supports and services provided to Miss Anne-Marie Smith, an NDIS participant who died last year in truly horrific circumstances. And in the course of his review, Mr Robinson took the opportunity to consider wider issues of safeguarding of people with disability who are particularly vulnerable. It's almost inconceivable, isn't it then, that this Morrison government has utterly failed people with disability who are particularly vulnerable to the COVID pandemic. Professor Anne Kavanagh was right when she said just 3 days ago that the vaccine rollout for disabled Australians was negligent and a failure, and the consequences could be dire amid a surging Delta outbreak. I mean, if we ever needed proof of the consequence of the Prime Minister's botched vaccine rollout, it was the news delivered to the disability sector last week by the Minister for the NDIS that only around a quarter of Australians in the scheme are fully vaccinated. The federal government's highest priority group is behind the national average. You know, we're talking about hundreds and thousands of people with disabilities who have not had their jabs. You know, days ago, we hear that only about 26.9% of the 260-odd thousand NDIS participants aged over 16 who are in 1A or 1B of the rollout were fully vaccinated. And as for the workforce, some 164-odd thousand people helping care for people with a disability, 55.6% with their first jab and 36.7% with 2 doses. It is not good enough. It is not nearly good enough. You know, just over a quarter of all Australians with a disability vaccinated is a national shame. That less than 50% of people with disabilities living in group homes are vaccinated is a crisis. You know, the Prime Minister is insisting this week on trying to treat Australians as if we're old goldfish, and we'll do one lap around the goldfish bowl and we'll forget everything that he's previously said and everything that he's failed to do when it comes to the 2 huge priorities of this year, the vaccine rollout and fit-for-purpose quarantine. We're not goldfish though, are we? We will remember the failures because they're failures for people with vulnerabilities like people who are on the National Disability Insurance Scheme, like our First Nations Australians where vaccine rates are far, far too low, like many of the pockets of disadvantaged communities where the vaccination rates are much lower than the state and national averages. There is a lot of work to be done for all Australians in this country to get vaccinated, but if we can't get this priority group of people with disabilities vaccinated, then we will continue to be suffering from a national shame. As we all watch and celebrate the Paralympics and cheer on our local heroes and people from across this country who are absolute testaments to resilience and success, let's remember people with disabilities need to be vaccinated and the NDIS needs to reach all of the potential of its introduction. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.